Hello everyone and welcome back to the Babbling Irons channel. Today we've got another transfer show for you guys, joined by Mike and Sloth as always. And lads, we've got quite a lot to talk about today, so we'll get through it one by one. But yeah, hold on if you're watching, because there's some interesting stuff happening with West Ham at the moment. Just played our pre-season matches again yesterday. Drew with Bournemouth 1-1 and beat Ipswich 2-1, which was nice to see the likes of Downs featuring, a few youngsters as well impressing again. But today we're going to talk about transfers. X has put out a nice update for us today to get our teeth into, and I guess the first one to start with is the reports that came out. We know Broja is our top target for striker, but there might be an alternative because that deal could be a bit difficult, and that man is Gianluca Scamacca. Quite a handful to say. We'd have to get familiar with how to say that one. But I guess just to start with, lads, what is the type of player we can expect to see from someone like Scamacca? And if he was to join, hypothetically, what assets he would bring to the club?
I'll let Sloth kick off on this one, and then I'll jump in after.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of covered my man crush on him kind of the other week, didn't we? Where
we did. We got quite deep quite quickly.
The best way to describe him is he's a 6'5" mobile target man. His numbers. It's really interesting because he's a great goal scorer, and he's got a ton of aerial ability. He's got an absolute hammer of a right foot that he doesn't really need much lift back with. But I think he got 1 assist this season, and that really kind of doesn't tell the story of how good he is with his link-up play, because he creates chances, but he's really good with his feet. Now, bear with me if you're kind of recoiling and thinking, the same things were said about Allaire, but he's a much more of a mobile target man. He presses and he does really put himself about. He's much more of an Arnie style player than someone like Allaire. And I mean, for me, it's a really exciting link. We'll go over whether I think it's kind of what I think of the deal further on. But in terms of a player, he's one that I think he'd be the most exciting Italian since Paolo Di Canio. Let's face it, in my opinion.
Bold statement to make, that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's how confident I am that if he came, I mean, at the very least, he'd get goals from headers, from set pieces. He would cause havoc. So, I genuinely think if we signed him, we'd be looking at least 10 goals in the first season, and then pushing on to that as he kind of adapts. So I'm very confident with it if he were to sign.
Yeah, I guess, Mike, touching on your view of it, you produced a really nice scouting report over on our Twitter, which I just put on the screen momentarily, and I'll put it back up again now for everyone to see. And just, I guess, run through what he's like as a player from this in a bit more kind of statistical detail, and what people could expect from him, and how he kind of compares to, say, a Broja or an Antonio that we've already got.
Yeah, so as Sloth said, he's got really good link play. His link play is good, but in terms of sometimes receiving it into feet with his back to goal, his hold-up play can sometimes be a bit inconsistent. So he's very good link play. Hold-up play sometimes it's slightly hit and miss, but ultimately, overall, what he does to kind of compensate for that, like an Arnie, which Sloth was right to point out, that was the player I was going to go for that type of player. He has that swagger anyway about him, but it's more that he likes to drop into pockets and then link and then move. So like with Allaire, who likes to stay central, which Scamacca likes to do as well. But what he is more likely to do is to drop deep, to get the ball turned and then run with it or lay the ball off. He's much more kind of mobile in that sense. At 6'5", you would think he's just going to be a target man, but he has so much more to him. He's got a lot of technical ability. So I guess you could probably, if you want an English context, a Peter Crouch in many ways, in the sense of really tall, very technical player, can score goals which you would just go, you shouldn't be doing that because you're a big man. You should just be getting on the end of things and heading them in. Anyone who's not watched him, thoroughly recommend you go and check out the goal he scored against Milan this season, and arguably against the top goalkeeper in Serie A last season. He just completely just left him rooted to the spot as he just popped it into the top corner. It was sublime goal from outside the area. The things that have impressed me as well is that when he gets a chance, he's pretty clinical. He doesn't really miss when he's on target. The shots are always good and his conversion rate's high. Again, defensively, maybe he doesn't do as much as he should do, but again, it's partly down to how Sassuolo play. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. They kind of allow him to be a bit more free because they have players like Berardi and Raspadori who kind of do some of that kind of donkey work behind him. And it's kind of to allow him to be free and collect the ball and then pass it on. So what he does is bring elements what we have with Antonio, but ultimately he brings a different kind of flavour. So that is why when I say the links that we had previously to Mbolo and Mbolo's now going, I'm not gutted about that because for me it's too similar to Antonio. I know people like the idea of, well, we need like for like. You don't. Well, I don't think we do. I think we need alternatives because last season we had Plan A. Plan A didn't work. We had Plan A 0.1. There's never actually go to a Plan B. Yeah. So to have an actual Plan B and a way to change our game tactically would come with someone like Scamacca.
Yeah. I think the pointing thing for the Mbolo deal is just the price. Yeah. Like 12.5 million euros is nothing.
Endless, isn't it? Really is.
And you're just kind of thinking, well, I mean, I'm not that bothered about missing out, but 12.5 million is nothing these days. Yeah. So yeah, that's the only disappointment with that side of things, I think.
In regards to Scamacca then, I mean, it's been reported that he's going to be around 40 to 50 million, which is we're likely to go in with around 40 million if we are going to bid, and I think they want more towards 50. So having him as a plan B is nice in theory, but if you're bringing someone in for £50 million to play striker, the emphasis will be that he will be a starter. So I guess it moves on to kind of our next topic with him, how he compares to Antonio as a player and what Moyes would prefer to go with. Would it be a game-by-game situation? Because if you're coming in for £50 million, you're going to want to be starting. You're going to want to be imposing your impacts. Like, we don't want to see another Haller situation where we spent 45 million and he kind of gets disregarded by the end of things because he doesn't play how Moyes wants to play. So if we look at the comparison here with Antonio, you can kind of see the differences between the two players. So I guess another one for you guys is to kind of take a look at this and maybe give your opinion on who you would want to see leading the line. Should they both be at the club next season, and who you think Moyes would prefer to go with?
I think when you look at it, so statistics tell one side of the story, right? It breaks out all of the emotional side of football, and what we can say is with Antonio, if you look at this, what you could arguably say is that Antonio likes to play more in line with being physical and being in touch with a centre-back. He likes to play with his back to goal and to engage physically or to be engaged physically by a player because he likes to roll them, likes to get the ball, likes to run with it. Whereas Scamacca is more about a player who likes to kind of drop deep, make passes, and then utilise space in which to get in to score. Now, if you also look at the kind of scoring as well, Scamacca actually scored more goals, obviously 16 in total over the course of the season. Obviously, let's be clear, these are league views, not a total season. But again, what you've got to look at is Scamacca obviously does get more shots because, again, he's in more positions to shoot. Also, the way Sassuolo play as a front combination is quite similar to us in many ways in that they have inverted wingers. Berardi is very much like Bowen, if we're going to kind of pick as to who they are. But he's enabled to get into positions where he can score, but also that's his primary operation. It's you need to get in the area to score. With Antonio, we have a different premise on how we use him. So again, this is why I talk about plan Bs. Certain games, you maybe don't need an Antonio to be running the channels all the time. You just get in the area so we can get the ball in the box, and we want you to fight it out. again, you look at the percentage of shots, nearly 50% of all of his shots are on target. About 26% are also then goals converting into goals. His goal conversion is one of the best in Europe as well. If we look at shots to percentage, it's one of the best in Europe. So whilst many will say, "Oh well, he's not going to be the same as Antonio," that's fine. Why? We've worked with Antonio. Antonio works brilliantly for us, but not in all games does Antonio work. And I think we have to acknowledge that sometimes he can get marked out of a game, or he can go slightly missing and drift wide. That's where he's actually done well, in the sense of, because of his ability as a winger, he has then obviously created through crosses and so on. So in those games where he has struggled, he's ultimately maybe done something in some of those games because he's been able to impact in other ways. But we've got to appreciate that what we're going to be signing is a natural striker whose instinct is to work within the boundaries of the 18-yard area. And his, primary objective is to score. And I think sometimes, as fans now, the way football has developed, that we tend to actually undermine players who are concentrated on that simple truth of wanting to score goals. And we look at the assists and go, well, they're not doing enough in open play. But if they're scoring 16, 17 goals, the assist is redundant. Antonio got 10 goals, I think, and about 8, assists, something like, roughly, off the top of my head. So if you've got a player scoring 16 goals and Antonio's doing that, well, neither one is more effective than the other, really, in reality, because it's maybe a 2-goal difference. And if you also look at it, Antonio's expected goals is less. So his goals to expected goals is less. So I think he's wasted at least 2 to 3 opportunities to score.
Not surprising either.
No, exactly. And it's because sometimes he can be rash. We've been seeing that in the pre-season game against Ipswich. You just kind of laugh, because in that game was Antonio in a nutshell. Beautiful cross for Zuma, brilliant header from Zuma and then goal. But then he gets a couple of shots and he completely fucks his lines, which is why we kind of love him and at times also despair at him. But Scamacca in that situation has a calmer exterior, because that's been his role since a kid all the way through to being a professional. So there's more of a natural ability, and we shouldn't look down on that. And in terms of the what overall contributions, and Sloth made the point, he's involved so much in play that the one assist doesn't tell the whole story. He's involved a lot in that build-up, and he is a player that can facilitate that quick movements. And remember when we had like Andy Carroll, as soon as the man got in the area, defenders panicked, draws 1 or 2 players to him. You can then have players running at the back post. That's why, especially in the Babbling season, why Antonio did brilliantly, because Andy Carroll, when he got in the centre of got in the area, petrified players. Antonio could come in round the back, because all of a sudden you have a player that occupies a defender and a centre back.
Well, that actually leads on to this comment actually from Connor, which is kind of alludes to what you just mentioned there about Antonio. Is saying, if we got Scamacca, does he push Antonio to the wing again potentially? Because surely, again, as we mentioned, Scamacca would want regular game time. So, Sloth, one for you. Having a player like Scamacca, can you see Antonio ever going back onto that wing, or do you think he's just going to be a centre forward now for Moyes, and it's going to be hard to get him back to that wing?
I would not be surprised if he's given a bit more of a free range, like a free roaming role. One of the things that I would say is that it's really important to remember that the season we've just had, I'd say Bowen and Antonio were probably our 2 main outlets in terms of pace. They were the 2 players who you could rely on to really bomb forward and stretch defences. Now, Scamacca is again, he's going to be looking to stretch those defences, but he's a good link-up man, so he'll be able to find passes. He'll be able to find Bowen, who's running past the man. And if we want to play Antonio out on the left, or we want to play him on the right, we can do that. He gives us that freedom to allow 2 players either side to bomb forward. And do I think that's where he's kind of settled? Well, he's played the majority of his career out in the wing. So I kind of think we need to get away from this idea that this person has to be starting. They're the first name on the team sheet and nothing changes. And if someone else comes in, then they have to change their game to how we play, because it just doesn't work like that. We can easily put, I mean, what would stop us going to a 4-4-2 like system next season and play Bowen in behind Antonio and Scamacca, if that were to happen? That kind of thing, could happen. So while everyone might say, oh, Moyes isn't a 4-4-2 type manager, well, during a game, if he thinks we need more pace here, Scamacca gives us that option. He allows us that freedom. So do I think it would see Antonio move out to the wing? No, but what I do think it would give us is a really great tool set for unlocking defenses. And what people need to move away from is this idea that this person has to start, and instead we've got a squad. We've got a lot of games next year. How are we best going to be able to utilize that? So
let's not forget we've got 5 subs next year you can use in a game. So the concept, if you look at Man City, are a prime example of what you do with a squad. Man City last season didn't have 5 subs, but Man City have some huge players who sit on the bench. De Bruyne sits on the bench from time to time.
Yeah.
And then he comes on to affect the game. Now, De Bruyne, for most teams, will just say it's sacrilege to ever drop him. But Pep will drop him, and then he'll bring him in. So this is the thing, that football's becoming far more of this squad game. And the teams like Liverpool and Man City demonstrate that so much more than other teams. And with 5 subs next year, if things aren't working, you can pretty much remove half your team.
Yeah.
So, we need to be mindful of the fact that, yes, someone may not start, but it's about giving them a quality set of game time. There's no reason why the game's not going well. For instance, we may go, right, well, we're absolutely dead up front. We're 1-0 down, not creating anything. Let's just cause havoc. So let's drop a player, put Scamacca up front. Let's put Antonio up front. We'll lose a midfielder. We'll come on to the person that I'm going to kind of reference now as to what this could be. We then go to a back 3 with dynamic fullbacks, or wing backs. So you're going to sacrifice the defender. You're going to push up further in midfield. And, you can essentially have a 3-man attack force of Bowen, Antonio, Scamacca. And then you've basically got a fullback who's going to get battered by pace and power. You've got another one who's going to have someone who's going to constantly want to take them on the inside or the outside. And then you also then got a 6'5" centre forward ready in there to try and head it. And if he's not there, you've got another guy who's just under 6 foot who has got a powerful leap. And again, he's going to be running in on your fullback. So it's all about having those options to turn around at, say, half time, 60 minutes and go, right, now's the time to change. I think what we saw last season was Moyes not feeling he had the players to make those changes. So he just ran his players into the ground. He's also said before that he likes to run players until he thinks they can't run anymore. So I think that happened last year. Next year, teams are going to be utilising those subs a lot more. So it is going to be one of those adapt or die situations. Teams that adapt well and players that come on to make a point. I think ultimately we could see things mix up next year with teams, especially with teams with bigger squads.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the biggest thing, especially with 5 subs, is versatility. And we definitely didn't have that last season. And you saw that in a few games where a game was crying out for something different. We just didn't have the personnel, or Moyes was, his stubborn self in terms of trusting certain players. But even then, the players that we did have available probably wouldn't have made the impacts that we would have liked. So I think versatility, having someone like Scamacca could be really good. It gives a completely different option to someone like Antonio. It gives you the option to play a different system, whether that be a back 3 or more traditional 4-4-2. which, although it's not Moyes' preferred formation, it actually worked out quite well in I think it was his first spell when we had Antonio and Haller, and we played that 4-4-2. So it definitely gives us different options. It'd be interesting to see if Scamacca doesn't happen, because our number one target is still Broja from Chelsea. It looks like he's going to be joining Chelsea's pre-season tour in America later this week. But X has said he remains our number one target. I think Chelsea want about 30 to 35 mil for him. So it could end up being one we have to be patient on. But I guess it now poses the question, when we're getting linked to players like Scamacca, do we kind of need to move away from Broja, or do we stick with pursuing him? Because we could get to a situation where, we're a week away from the season starting, we're waiting for Broja, and it doesn't happen. So it's one we've got to be careful with. You're on mute, Mike.
Mate, this is what happens at work all the time. I think it comes down to you have a conversation with the board as to, if we move forward with this deal for, say, Scamacca, and we manage to finalise this, should Broja become available, do we still move forward? Can we move forward? And do we actually bring forward, say, budget set aside for the following year and make maybe potentially a bigger loss this year, and then next year look to recoup in elsewhere? I made a point earlier as to, and it's not a point that many are going to like, but it's a bit of the true fact of what is going to be West Ham at the moment, is that we could gamble this year and go quite big. I genuinely think that if we wanted to, we could go quite big this summer, because next season, if things don't go well, we know we have two assets that we could sell in essence for probably about 160 plus million quid together. I'm not going to say who they are, because I think we all know who those two assets are. But ultimately, there's a way that we can look at this as, we could go all out this summer, and then next season recoup if we need to. So there is an option to go all in, and I think with Broja, it's a waiting game with Chelsea at the moment. And the way I kind of look at it is, there's every chance that come the end of the window, he may be available for a fee. He may be available for a loan, but I would expect that would be with an obligation. So if we wait, we go into the season with one striker. I don't think we can do that. Regardless of how much Moyes wants Broja, I don't think he necessarily wants to do that. So I think we probably would move forward, and we would probably try and slow down the pace of a deal if it gets to those final stages, if Broja's still there. But there has been reports as well saying that we could be tempted for both. So yeah, I guess it comes down to, if the economic terms we can make with Chelsea are good enough to mean we can incorporate both, that's great. But again, I wouldn't do a deal for both if it impacts the rest of the squad.
Yeah, I mean, let's just look at his stats. Sloth, you can go through this a bit more as well, because he's a very different player. Well, not very different, but he is different to Scamacca in terms of the way he plays. So I guess looking at this report again, one from Mike on the Twitter page, what kind of differences are there between Broja and someone like Scamacca, and how they can slightly be compared in terms of what they would bring to how Moyes plays and how they play as an individual?
Well, I think probably the key thing is, and with Broja, he's a lot more. He will run at a player, and he's a lot more kind of direct. He's not quite running the channels, but he moves in that Antonio-esque way that we know he'll drop deep, and he'll really run at players. And I mean, it's a funny one for me, because I think. While I think Broja has huge potential, I'm not someone who's 100% sold on him. Like, we're talking about someone who's got 8 league goals, and we're talking about a £30 million price tag. So for me, it's a bit of a, he's a luxury price. He's a luxury price player. He's not a luxury player, but he's someone who we would need to spend. If we're going to buy him, it's going to be a statement. And it's one that I think at his age, he's got a load of room to improve, but so has Scamacca. Whereas Scamacca's a bit more of a natural goal scorer. He's got that aerial ability that, to be honest, for a 6-foot+ player, I just haven't seen from Broja. I haven't seen this idea that he's going to be a great target man or really bulldoze through players. He did it to us, but he didn't really outmuscle anyone. He didn't really, apart from Dawson, I think, for that dodgy penalty. But that, for me, was more just kind of bad defending. But I don't know. I'm kind of apprehensive about the figures with Broja, because while I think part of me says if he's Moyes' number one target, go for him 100%. But personally, I would rather sign someone who is that bit more proven and we know is a team's number one striker. The stats there kind of show how how hard he works and how much he runs at defenders. But for me, that's all well and good, but you're only getting eight league goals. And I know he's been in and out of the Southampton side, but kind of that almost raises as many questions for me as it answers, because why is he in and out of the squad when their alternatives are, let's be honest, not the best? So
I think what I find interesting as well, so I don't know if you agree with that, like, if you look at Scamacca, obviously this season, 16 goals, I believe. Last season for Genoa, so again, not a big team in Syria, but again, still had 12 goals, 2 assists, so still 14 goal contributions. So in the past 2 seasons in Syria, he's been in double figures for goal contributions. So that's a good standard of league. He's been at one at Genoa, who I believe may have just scraped relegation, a relegation fight. They're this season against Sassuolo, again, a mid-table team, brilliant attacking, terrible defending, but again, 16 goals. So he's scoring goals in arguably poorer or lesser sides in Italy. Now, again, I understand people want to go, well, Simone Zaza scored goals for in Italy and then look what he was. But I think this is a different player to Zaza. And there's a bit of a derogatory view to Scamacca because he's from Syria. He's just broken into the Italian team and he's like 23, 24. Whereas Broja is kind of held as this pantheon of brilliant, pacey striker and so on. But to the point, he scored 8 goals. We have to also acknowledge he played in a 2-man of strike force. We play a lone centre forward. Scamacca plays a lone centre forward. So there's going to be a level of adaptation from Broja. There's also, again, the trade-off that Broja's link play and his ability in possession isn't the same level as Antonio. It's quite a way off of Antonio. And it's also off of Scamacca. So we would be paying 30 million, but you're paying 30 million for a rough gem that could be polished into a diamond, but he is a rough gem. We have to be very honest about that.
Yeah.
And he has the pace to hurt teams, but we've got to use him. Now, I will give him a little bit of slack in terms of the drop-off at the end of last season, in the sense of, it was rumoured that we went in for him in January. It sounded like it was quite progressed until we decided to try and switch the deal to a loan. So that could explain as well part of the drop-off, in that he was expecting to be playing for us and maybe in Europe, and then that dream got kind of dashed, and so did so some other things. And then let's face it, Southampton didn't have a necessarily great
I think they dropped off in the second half of the season massively.
Exactly. So there are, I think, mitigating factors into how he dropped off last season. He's a raw player, could be fantastic, but I think he would be, ideally, if Moyes could have his own way, I think he would take both. Because Antonio is 32, has 2 years left on his contract. That's over that 2-year period, you've got 2 players that you can bring through, polish into the players that you want. Arguably, you would probably think that he's probably thinking, well, if I was to get Scamacca, that in the next 6 months, this is going to be my star man. And over the course of that last season, and again, this isn't derogatory to Antonio, because Antonio can very well still be our star man for the next 2 years. It's just he's physically, he's an impressive specimen of a man, and he is quality apart from the occasional brain farts in front of goal. But it does give you the opportunity, if you manage to get both, which has been talked about, to have a very stable player in Antonio that you know and you trust, whilst you bring these guys in. I think with Allaire, that wasn't the thought process, mainly because it wasn't Moyes' player, and Moyes didn't want to adapt, and Allaire tried to, but again, there were other mitigating factors, such as our midfield being about 10, 15 yards away from it at all times, which ultimately made it even harder for him. So I do think Broja, will be his number one target, because he's seen him in the Premier League. He has, well, let's face it, he absolutely embarrassed us on a couple of occasions, and he battered who was arguably our best defender last season in Dawson. And paces, as we've said a number of times, petrifies teams in the Premier League.
Well,
He can score. It's just he fell off a bit last year. Again, we have to acknowledge he's not going to be Antonio. He's not going to play like Antonio. So if we do sign him, we can't expect the same performances in terms of not necessarily the ball carrying, because his ball carrying is good, but that progressive passing, that playing other players in, creating for others. He's more of a get the ball and run with it, or get in behind the line and then score and be clinical. That's more his style. I think he could be a target man, but I'd say he's more of a Vardy than he ever is going to be an Antonio, if I was to pick a kind of some sort of comparison.
Well, let me put it this way as well. I think if Broja comes in, Broja is going to sit on the bench for times of the season. He's not going to be the main man. Whereas if Scamacca comes in, he's going to want to be the main man. He's going to want starts. He's going to want to be one of the first names on the team sheets. And Antonio's time will have to be kind of taken away from him as such. Like Moyes will be forced almost to play Scamacca, because there's no way he's just going to want to come in and sit around. You know, it's. I'm not saying Moyes will be forced to do things, but he's going to put pressure on him to try and do things, and he's going to want to play. Whereas Broja, again, let's face it, he's going to come in, he's going to be very much second choice, and he's going to have to fight his way into the team past Antonio. Now, my main kind of worry with that is that he comes on and misses a chance, and suddenly every single West Ham fan online, why have we spent all this money on this donkey? Blah, like, there's a reason Chelsea let him go. And like, you can guarantee that's going to happen at any point in the season. Like, if he misses a good chance, that's going to happen unless he's hit 10 goals by December.
Yeah.
And what does that do to a young man? With Scamacca, if he misses a chance like that and it's early on in his career, I genuinely think he won't give a toss, because he'll think, I'm going to get more chances like that. I'm going to do this. We haven't seen anything from Broja that would say, actually, he's got the mettle. He's going to go forward. He's going to really... everyone's saying at the moment, he's got that dog in him. You know, he's got that dog. He's going to go forward. He's going to run at defenders, and he's going to make his own chance. Now, Broja is a battler. He's physical. He's quick. But, you know, 8 goals is 8 goals.
Yeah, I think for me, with what we need this summer, I think we're not going to spend 80 to 85 million on 2 players that can arguably be brought in as one person when we've got Antonio. I think Moyes will, because, you know, Antonio's still got 2 years left, and, you know, last season he was very important for us. Let's not forget that, because yes, he went quiet, but again, he had no competition. He was playing all of these games. He'd done very well to stay fit in that time. So I think for me, although Scamacca, however you say it, is probably the better option in terms of if you want a goal scorer, I think for us and what we need this summer, I think I'd actually prefer to go for someone like Broja, who there isn't that initial expectation of him starting. He's still 20. He's still got a lot of time to develop into, a really good player. And I think it's the type of player Moyes likes to kind of develop himself and bring into a system he likes. And then you look at, the other positions we need and the players we're targeting for those positions. Someone like Onana, who's going to cost, 35 million for that central midfield role. We also need a right winger, which we're going to get onto. We'll need an attacking midfielder. We'll need a left winger. We need a left back. There's still a lot of other work to do. So I can't see us getting both unless we somehow get Broja on loan. Yeah. But I don't think he'd want to do that. And another thing with Broja is he wants to join. He's already said that he wants to join. Staying in London, playing in the Premier League. So I think he would come with not necessarily a point to prove, but he would come with a lot of ambition to make his mark on the team. Being 20 years old, still a long way to go. Compare that to Rice, who we all still consider as a young player. He's 23. It's a big difference. You see Rice's progression from 20 years old to 23. I'm not comparing their ability, but you kind of understand my point. So I think I would go with Broja just because it's cheaper. It's a position I don't think we need to immediately improve our starting 11 on. I think Antonio's good enough to lead the line next season as long as we have that other option. And then, I guess we get onto the other positions, and that kind of leads us onto the next segment, which is the left back position, because another week's gone, lads, and it's looking a bit sticky. But the interest in David Raum has come back around. I think we were linked with him about a month ago now, and we did a report on him. He is a left wing back. He's not a natural left back, so that's another point to mention about him. But do you think, he is a really good player? He's an excellent player. Do you think he'd be able to adapt to a back four? And how can we kind of compare him to Cresswell?
Yeah, so the one thing I will say, just to go back quickly on the last point, was the duality of our board is the fact that the Scamacca approach could be a smokescreen, could be a facade, it could just be bluster. Right, so that's the negative side. The positive side of it, when we hear the thing of there's the chance we maybe actually still go for both, is the fact that we do have an owner who is fixated and obsessed with attackers and loves to give a gift now and then. And let's face it, he's just had a lovely gift in his bank balance from a new investor last season. So he's got a spare bit of cash floating around in his pocket at the moment. So there's every chance that he may think in his which is probably going there last year, is I want to go out with a bit of a well, look what I did for you. If it all goes tits up, he can say, but I splashed my cash and I gave you this player and you guys did this. But it's always that kind of thing, isn't it? It's always that duality with him. But moving on to the kind of Raum, it's, again, if you look at, he's a difficult one to assess if you look at him statistically in terms of defending. And I'd never really like to use statistics defensively on a player, because the problem is you can look at the number of duels or number of successful defensive actions, and it can be deceptive, because often you will look at that data and go, well, if they're not engaging in many duels, they're not having many successful defensive actions, then they're not that involved defensively. But what it doesn't talk about is, well, how much possession do they have? How much of the play that they have as a team? But where we look here, where we talk about the amount of tackles he makes, that does show that he does get involved more, or he tackles or wins the ball possession more than, say, Cresswell does. What I think is quite telling when you look at Raum in his defensive kind of piece is that he doesn't engage in that many duels, partly because that's how it is statistically in his team in terms of their approach. They have a lot of the ball, so he doesn't necessarily need to defend as much. But when he does engage, he does win quite a few. Now, my question always is with a left wing back is how do they do going backwards. I think Raum, if we're looking at left wing backs to potentially play as left back, he's the one that I would have more confidence in. We often see the likes of Sousa being linked. Sousa would petrify me in a back four. He's very good going in one direction. He is not very good going in the other direction. His timing is inconsistent, to be kind to him. But whereas Raum, there is a better defensive mind in there. We've seen that when England played Germany as well. He does have good concentration, which is obviously what you need. But ultimately, what he brings in attack is where you're really going to see what Raum does. And we've constantly said, so I think we'd be a bit remiss if we concentrated on his defensive, kind of skill set, because we've constantly said that we don't have a fullback that attacks. We don't have a fullback that is, whilst his possession stats are very good, when you look at things like forward passing and progressive passing, they're also quite easy to, if you've ever seen The Wire, there's a term called duking the stats, which is kind of, and that's kind of what it is. He passes forward a lot, but if you're passing 10, 15 yards to a winger just in front of you, that's easy. That's an easy stat. Same with progressive passes. As long as he passes it over, say, like 20 meters or passes it closer to goal, if he goes 20, 30 so on meters, then that's classed as a progressive pass. Now, it doesn't necessarily create something, but it looks good. It looks like they're progressive. So
yeah,
I don't think Cresswell's very good in possession, but I don't think he offers much in attack. Same when you look at his crossing. His crossing isn't actually that good. He has a worse cross percentage rate than Ben Johnson, who is constantly called out for his ability to cross. So again, you look at the numbers tell a different story to the perception. And I think with Raum, you get a player who can go on the outside. He can get a cross in, whether that's playing it along the floor or actually dinking it across. He's a player that will be a consistent form. And it's someone that could release Benrahma to play how Benrahma wants to play. We often saw last season him easily getting two players up on him. So he was constantly in 2v1s. He kind of come in, but then the player was always there to kind of maybe block the cross, because there wasn't then a player to distract them and maybe pull them away to give them that half a centimetre that they need in which to get that ball in. So someone like Raum, who's going to be consistently and constantly looking to overlap and get involved, is going to be nothing but good for us. Obviously, we have to look at where in midfield, but I think it's a really positive one. It's just comes down to, are we willing to potentially pay the 35 million euros? I think that has been talked around.
Yeah.
The most we've ever paid for a fullback is 7 million, and that's Masuaku.
Yeah.
Are we going to all of a sudden pay 23 million pounds more than we've ever paid on a fullback, especially when they've gone and plucked, say, Sufal out of obscurity for 5 million quid? Is that going to reinforce your idea of you don't need to spend much, you just need to get the right player? Is that going to be the same philosophy with Raum? So I kind of have a duality with it. One, because I know he's not a left back, so all these talks of him being a left back is not strictly true. Has incredible quality, but I think there's a trade-off, and I think we need to accept the trade-off. But what the biggest thing in that, if I'm going to be really positive about it, is what he does allow the team to do is to be tactically very flexible. So in game, we can switch from a back four into a back three. He is a player who is very comfortable in that formation. We've also brought in an assistant manager who, for all of last season, played a 3-4-3. So that's also going to help us, because last year we were appalling in that shape. So we have a manager who is our assistant manager now, but who is very comfortable in that system. We're clearly looking at a player who is comfortable in that position. And also the Mela links, very telling. That's a player who's played left wing back, right wing back. So we're clearly looking at players that are adaptable in other formations. So we're going to be incredibly positive about it. What it does mean is, well, we may have a trade-off at him at left back. If you look at it from if we change formation into a 3-4-3, then we've got an incredible asset.
Yeah, I think that's something that really appeals to me about this deal. Although it's, going to cost us 30 million or whatever, we've lost Mike. That's fine. Me and you. Oh, he's back. God, what was I saying? Yeah. So what kind of attracts me to this deal is that he can switch from, you know, that back four to back five. Obviously, he's not a natural left back, but for me, I think he can do that. From what I've seen, and you know, the more he plays it, the more comfortable he'll probably get with it. Thing with Cresswell is at the moment we want to switch to a back five. We can't put him left wing back. We've been playing Fornals there, so again, gives us that flexibility that you mentioned there, Mike. And I don't think past signings in terms of fullbacks should be looked at in terms of the price. I think if the player's there and is available and, you know, it works for the club and, you know, for both parties, we should do it. I guess one for you, Stoff, is we know about Raum's attacking capabilities, but how much of an improvement on Cresswell would he be defensively? Although he plays in a wing-back system, can you see similarities in terms of how good they are defensively, or would you say Raum is slightly better than Cresswell?
I think Raum is probably, he's got the recovery pace that if he does switch off like Cresswell has done, he's going to make that challenge. He's going to get back. He's a left wing back who can actually do the back part, as opposed to someone like Masuaku who just is left wing and can't really do anything when he gets back. He can't do anything. So Raum gives you a lot more kind of dependability in that formation. Is he as good as Cresswell in terms of out and out defense? I'd say not quite as good. Just because he's not quite as dependable. He's not quite got the same defensive know-how. That comes with experience. So, you know, a young guy, that will come into his game more. But he's very much an attacking left wing back. He's, as Mike said, going to be looking to give you an outlet, give you a chance. And if he has to sprint back 20, 30 yards to make a challenge, he'll do that. But it's not quite, you're not going to get the same ability to shepherd the ball out of play, shepherd someone into a corner, or make up for his lack of pace with defensive knowledge. Whereas Raum will give you maybe a slightly more rash end of things. I will say I agree with Mike that I just can't see us spending that on a left wing back. And when I sound like a stuck record, I've said it so many times, but when you have Bassi available from Rangers, who's been playing in the Europa League, can play left centre back and left back, and we know he's athletic and likes to bomb forward. He's a London lad as well. So for me, it's obviously Raum is a much, much better overall footballer. But when you have a manager who you know is going to want to play Cresswell, is going to want some form of familiarity to the position and the formation he plays, well, you can go out and you can get another homegrown lad and someone who you know he's going to be fine wherever you put him in. If we want to play a back three, he's going to be able to play left centre back. He's going to be able to play left back. And if you want to bring Elise in, if you want to rotate for cups, I think that's probably one of the best ways to do it. So
I've amongst the pigeons here. So if you were looking at Bassi, would we not just be better off looking at Elise, who is a left back, is a left centre back who has played left back, and developing our own homegrown player, our youth player, to actually be that player? Because Bassi, his crossing isn't consistent. It's not the best, but he's very good, sound defensively. So if that was the approach, would we not be best pushing our own, who could do that, who could be that? And would we not then see the benefits, because also Elise is also pretty quick. As we saw against Ipswich, that recovery pace in that run was incredible. So would we not be best if we're looking at homegrown to look at our own players and maybe go, Longelo maybe needs a loan first before we can say he is a left back, left wing back that we can trust. And maybe if we're looking at, say, or if we went down that approach of, say, a Bassi, that we actually look at what we have now in Elise and say, we're going to entrust you to be that player and develop you in two positions. Because I personally think that Elise might actually, his best route in, I did say, I think last season, that his best route might have been actually at left back, purely because of the left foot, good on the ball, got pace, physically very strong. Maybe that is the route, if we kind of, especially if we're looking at, say, a Bassi, whether that's the kind of player that maybe is a better option for us financially anyway, better option.
Yeah. Financially 100%. But I just think we've seen him play in Europe, and we've only really seen Elise play in stops and starts. We've not seen him have a of games, and I just kind of think for how we want to play, we're going to get a lot more defensively from Bassi, but we're also going to get that physical outlet. We're going to get that pure physicality that you can't really find in the left back position unless you're looking at the young lad from Udinese. It's a real valuable commodity, because when you have the ability to have a 6-foot player at left back who can bomb forward and give you an outlet, but is going to be, sat on the halfway line as opposed to caught out on the edge of the area of your opposition's area, then you have a lot more confidence in your defence, or a lot more kind of dependability there. And
what I've done with Tamiyasu with him at right back. Yeah.
But my thoughts on Tomiyasu. I think
I think the only thing I'd say about that one is I don't think, with that Arsenal example, as an example, they will have Tierney on the other side, who is much better, a much more offensive fullback, will cross the ball a lot, will overlap. If we have two players, Johnson is not necessarily someone that can be relied upon to do that. I think he's much better defensively than offensively. That may come with development. If we had someone like Bassi on the other side, it could be another case of that lack of offensive creativity that we need from a fullback, which is what's frustrated us most with Cresswell in terms of his attacking output. So it could be a similar situation. Although Bassi would be a brilliant player defensively for that left back spot, I don't think he would be able to offer enough going forwards for what we necessarily need to be targeting to improve that spot. Because I think the way football's going in general, fullbacks arguably probably most look at as more attacking options rather than just their defensive capabilities. If you're not good going forwards, then a lot of scouts will kind of just disregard you completely. So I think you need to be able to do both. I'm not sure Bassi can necessarily do that well enough, and obviously in the Premier League it'll be different as well. So yeah, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, he can't match Raum on a offensive level, or going forward. He can't match him that way. But I do think there's a player there, but also one that we would be able to get 3-4 goals out of a season just by chucking it into the area, and he's going to give you that physicality, that leap.
I think you could argue the same with Rom, though, couldn't you? That he may not be scoring them, but he's going to assist them, and he maybe get 1 or 2 as well himself. So I think as well, if we're just going to counterbalance it, I think with Rom, there are goals in his involvement. So I think, and I think also when you look at the kind of guys we're looking at with kind of, he's got, I think most of the players we're linked to are 6'4" minimum. Broja's 6'4", Scamacca 6'5", Onana is 6'5". So that's 3 players alone that are coming in that are, 6 foot plus behemoths. So
Yeah.
if we were to get just 2 of those, that increases the size of our team, because we already have Souček as well. So we're going to have an incredibly big team next year if we bring in at least 2 of those options. I think even Raum is 5'10", 5'11", something like that. So he's just under 6 foot as well. So, which is, a big upgrade from our 5'7" left back that we currently have. So,
well, I guess that kind of, again, nice little segment on our final kind of topic of the day, which is Ismaila Sarr. Another one, I think he's 6 foot, 6 around there, 6 foot.
Like that, yeah.
It looks like, from what X was saying, that we could be ready to make a bid very soon. I think we're definitely looking at him. I think he's a Wasserman agent as well. Yeah. So again, where Downs came from. So I guess this one is an interesting one. I think they value him at around 20 million. Obviously, he's not going to be one of their players next season, so he's looking to go. Watford will need to cash in terms of what they need financially. Is this one that you guys would welcome at the club? Or, because at the moment, Bowen has 0 competition out on that right-hand side. We don't have another right winger. Yarmolenko's gone. I think he signed for a new club today as well. And Sarr is definitely a much more out-and-out winger over on that right-hand side, where he's been effective for Watford. Not so much last season. He had a lot of injuries. I think he got 5 goals. And again, numbers have been probably... A lack of consistency is probably what people will highlight with a player like Sarr. But do you think it would be a good addition? Because, he's not going to have that expectation of coming in and being a starter straight away. And we're obviously going to have a lot of games next season with Conference League, Carabao Cup, FA Cup. So is Sarr, well, 2 questions. Is one, Sarr is good enough to play for West Ham? And B, is the price right for 20 million?
Very quickly, I think, yeah, good enough to play for us. I think that's a given. I think 2 years ago, we would have all said, let's get Ismaila Sarr in. 20 million, it's not bad. Pretty decent deal. I would also, just as a personal kind of view, and again, because we talk around homegrown players or players can be homegrown, I would personally reach out to PSV and see what the price is on Madueke. There is clearly movements going on in that club in which to manage their wing positions. Player that's just been called out by Connor, which is, I know, a player that Sloth will get very excited about when I say his name. Semenyo. He can play up front. He can play on the wings. It's potentially another option. What I would say is I don't think at right midfield there is a plethora of talent at the moment that's available. I think Sarr brings a different quality than what Bowen does. I think Sarr is more of your traditional winger and I even think those stats can quite clearly demonstrate that. You have a player that likes to get on the ball, absolutely just run at their fullback consistently. Bowen's more about finding space and interpreting space and using the space as his way of attacking as opposed to using the ball. So Sarr will be great, but I don't think he's going to start over Bowen. I don't think he starts over Ben Rama at left wing either. So I think it's good for 20 million. I'd be interested if it was over 20 million. I probably would look elsewhere and be having conversations with teams like PSV to see if the likes of Noni Madueke is available and available for the same type of price. Because if you've ever seen watched Madueke, he is electric. His pace is frightening. And he does play a bit like Bowen, has that bit of a Sarr, bit of a Bowen kind of thing. He's very direct, very pacey, and loves a long range shot into the top corner every now and then. But yeah, that's my take on Sarr. I think it would be a good deal, but it would need to be like 20 million, I think, because we have too many other positions. And that's the thing that worries me is how far does our budget stretch? And it's kind of, if signing Sarr meant we didn't get Raum, for instance, then no, I wouldn't take it. I'd rather turn around and actually forego a winger and just go Okaflex, Chester's, you're going to be supporting the team with the other guys who are flexible, such as, and I hate to say this, but like the likes of Ben Fornals and so on, be using their flexibility to compensate for it, because I'd rather get a left back over getting wingers, and
What about, say, I think that we don't have someone that can play out on that right wing really if Bowen gets injured. So say Bowen got kind of a 2 or 3 month injury. If we didn't sign Sarr, who would you put out there instead? Because we've only got really Fornals, Ben Rama, or even Lanzini that can do it, or Vlasic if he's still at the club.
Well, if we get in both Broja and Scamacca, you get Antonio, so problem solved.
Yeah.
But again, it all comes down to what are we getting elsewhere. If the budget allows us to go and get him as well as other positions, then by all means, like we do need wingers. I guess the other point is we did a whole podcast on the youth players and who gets a chance and maybe who does. There's an argument that you could say that maybe even Ashby, because he is so forward-thinking, gets a chance as a right winger. No, it's not necessarily his natural position, but he plays right back, plays right wing back, and he has played further forward. So there's the argument he could do that, or even Okaflex can go on that right-hand side. There's Thierry Neves. So we have also said that we want to see more youth, so we also maybe have to be a bit mindful that when we consistently ask for players to be signed, we are also putting blockers in for our youth players. So if we want to see youth players given a chance, we also maybe have to at some times not invest in the market and actually invest in our youth products. The problem is what we're chasing for is the problem, because we're chasing for top 6, in any ideal world, a top 4, which is a push. But so it's very hard to have that level of faith or that level of we're just going to do it. We're going to use the strength elsewhere and we're going to chance that position and maybe then move players around.
Yeah, I think for that one, in terms of, bringing youth through, if we lost a player like Bowen and we didn't have an out-and-out winger to play there, bringing someone like Okaflex, Chesters, Ashby, there's an enormous amount of pressure on them to perform straight away. There's not going to be that kind of that backdrop in terms of, he's young, he needs time to develop and kind of be integrated into the squad slowly, like Rice, like Johnson. It's.
I would say, to be fair, that we played Rice as part of a relegation battle. So sometimes a baptism of fire is where you find out the character of a player. So again, just playing devil's advocate and just kind of putting.
No, it's a good point. It is a good point because Rice was really good when he played in that back three as well. So I guess in terms of again to counter that, having an attacking output and being an attacker, there's a lot more pressure to perform in terms of providing goals or assists, especially considering the output Bowen will probably provide again next season. And I think Sarr, if we can get him for 20 million or under 20 million, would be a really, really good signing, really smart signing, because had he still been at a Premier League club, I think he would have cost us in excess of 30, 35 million. The fact that he's available for potentially less than 20 million is really good. He's still relatively young. He's not, 28, 29. He's still young. And is definitely an out-and-out winger and definitely prefers to play on the right and can definitely give us an option should we need it. We were speaking about versatility before, having 5 subs. If Bowen isn't performing, we don't have to rely on him to be on the pitch anymore. Although there's an argument to keep your best players on because they can produce magical moments. But if you have a player like Sarr, gives you a completely different, outlook on the game. And if you see Sarr coming on with 25 minutes to go as a left back, and you've just been playing against Bowen for 65 minutes, you're not going to be in the best state. You're going to be thinking, oh my God, like I've got 25 minutes for this. Yeah, exactly. So
one thing quite easy to forget about Sarr is that coming through at Rennes when he was there, he played left wing a lot. He played left wing a lot, and he played up top. He's played up top before, and he's not a bad finisher. I think injuries have played a bit of a big part in how we say he's not developed. But he's had games where pretty much single-handedly he's won them for Watford. I remember, I can't remember if it was during the lockdown or if it was this season when he absolutely tore Manchester United apart and just
He did
caused
Liverpool, didn't he, as well?
He did the same against
season
Liverpool,
before
yeah.
they got relegated, he absolutely tore up a new one.
Yeah. And I mean, he can do that to teams. He can do that to the best defenders in the world, and that is what pace can do. So for me, I think £20 million, if you can get him for 18, that's a no-brainer for me. It's a good buy, and it's one that gives you a lot of versatility. If Ben Rama picks up a knock, you can play him out on the left. If Bowen picks up a knock, you can put him in that right wing position. But he's got good finishing ability. If you watch a lot of his finishes, he's got a very cheeky little lob on him where he just deftly lifts it over the keeper, and that's a Bowen-esque thing to do. And people have been saying that Bowen could easily play up top. So I think he gives you a lot of options. I don't want to pay more than £20 million for him. I don't think that's a great deal. But in terms of a 18 to £20 million player coming in, he knows the league. He's settled in London, and this is a guy with a bit of pedigree, a few seasons under his belt, who has got the chance of European football. So he's going to have a bit of a point to prove. He's going to want to make a step up to nail a starting place.
So Sloth, I'm going to throw a curveball at you.
Ooh.
You said earlier someone was rumoured at 10 million quid. So what would you do if Traore actually genuinely was 10 to 15 million quid? What would then be your position on Sarr? Would you take him? Traore.
I'd still take Sarr because he is a genuinely better footballer. I can't quite
just imagine though having Traore to bring on that. Just imagine that.
I think it's the chaos that Traore is just
because I do think, and this is where I might lose a few people, but the difference between getting Broja and Scamacca, or the difference between getting Broja, Sarr, and Traore, for me, I'd get Broja, Traore, and Sarr, because it's ballistic pace. It's ballistic pace all over the attack.
Chaos, isn't it? It's basically in transition, you are set. You can put every man behind the ball and just keep those three upfield and just go, we're just going to hit the ball up and off you go.
I do think I think Scamacca is a fantastic player. I think he's the best out of them. But if you've got the ability to have Bowen and Ben Rama working their socks off for 70 minutes, and then suddenly, who's that on the touchline? Traore and Sarr.
I think I would just laugh if I saw that.
Yeah, I think as West Ham fans, we would all laugh because that is just sheer chaos met with. So basically, you got the right winged Antonio who's going to get in, have great chances to go. He's going to that's the corner flag.
Yeah. This is the thing with Traore, is that I wouldn't want to pay more than £14 million because he is the worst footballer. There's a reason he went from Barcelona to Middlesbrough to Wolves back to Barcelona, and Barcelona have just gone, what the hell have we done? And to be fair, there's a reason Barcelona are looking like they could cease to exist, but we'll park that aside. But it's just he's gonna give you an amazing outlet, but unfortunately it may well take it to the opposition court, opposition for a goal kick. That outlet may not really come of anything. 9 times out of 10 it won't. But if you can get Moyes, and if you can get Nolan just going to him, this is what you do with the ball. This is how you finish. Every single day, just get him finishing. Just then you can improve him. But
to be honest, part of me wouldn't mind us signing him just to watch Moyes' face as they start oiling up his arms. To be honest, I think that in itself would just be the pure quality value that I need.
I would sign him. I would sign him over Lingard. That's how much I can.
I agree with you there. I think he's an absolute chaos player, and it's that in that last 10, 15 minutes. And you've got to remember, we are mocking him because he can be a terrible footballer. But let's not forget a couple seasons back for Wolves, he was insane. I think he got like 11, 12 assists and also got about 5 or 6 goals. He was incredible. But that's the problem. He's so inconsistent. You can't expect that. But as an impact player, and if he is available for 10 million, part of me would then go, well, there's Lilian Thuram's son, who's currently apparently about 10 million. That's the left-hand side. He's pace. He can score. So for the same price of Sarr, I could get absolute chaos and just chaos. That's all I can think of just to explain him. He's just pure chaos and a little bit of guile to go on that left-hand side to get competition. And I've got 2 players for 20 million quid that are going to improve our squad. There's no 2 ways about it. And it also means we don't have to worry about Traore running at Cresswell at some point in the season, which is always just mental.
True. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of debate going on as to what our next move's going to be. Has been for a while. Other than the down signing, we still need a lot. We're midway through July now. Season starts in 3-4 weeks time, maybe 4 weeks time, and that's going to be against Man City. So a lot to still do. It's going to be interesting to see how the Scamacca deal progresses, if it does, or whether it's kind of more of a smoke screen for Broja. I think we'll know more within the next 48 hours around those. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Again, it looks like we might be lining up a bid for Sarr. So another one to definitely keep an eye on. And we'll see if anything comes from the David Raum interest as well. And whether we put in something a bit more concrete. But a lot of excitement, man. There's a lot going on at West Ham once again, which is great to hear. But it'll be good to see, 1 or 2 more signings trickling in over the next 1 to 2 weeks, especially in positions we need. And again, a player we didn't really mention today, but Onana, I think we went in for a second bid. So it's going to be interesting to see if we go in for a third bid on that one. So another one to stay tuned on. But yeah, we're gonna leave it there, guys. Sorry, we've ruined your Love Island. It started 15 minutes ago, but I'm sure this was more entertaining, talking about Traore and Moyes and the oil.
Got an phone call. That's a text. Shit, I've ruined it. That's my only Love Island reference I know. So.
Well, hopefully we all get some texts or notifications through over the next couple of days about some transfer news, and we'll there you go, got it in there. But yeah, if you want to find out more about these players in a bit more detail from what we showed on the screen temporarily, you can follow us over on Twitter at Babbling Irons. Close to 1,000 followers on there, so if you want to drop us a follow, that'd be greatly appreciated. We'll be back probably Friday or Saturday for another video, depending on whether there's any transfer updates as well. We might hop on again tomorrow if things progress. But yeah, it's been a nice show, lads. A long one. Plenty to discuss and plenty to be excited about still as a West Ham fan. So yeah, we'll see you guys next one. And one thing left to say: come on, you Irons.